Hey, what's up, everyone? I wanted to take a quick minute ahead of today's show to talk about some of the things we have going on at the Lionheart Radio channel. Right now, you're listening to a long-form conversation. I typically release those every Thursday, and I interview an elite athlete, thought leader, coach, high performer, anybody that I believe is living at a high level and has wisdom that we can extract, pull away, and apply to our own lives. Additionally, I have the morning coffee show, which is less than 10 minutes long. And in that show, we focus on emotional and psychological deep work. And typically, I just introduce a topic or a thought or an idea, and then just give you a way to think through it and apply it to your own lives. And so, one of the things that I believe is that there's a gap that exists between where most of us are and where most of us would choose to be living should we have the option. And I really see it as my mission to make that ideal vision attainable for you. And, I've built it in my own life, and I do believe that it's actually attainable for more people than we typically recognize. We have a tendency to look at people who are doing really great or extraordinary things in life, and we distance ourselves from them, thinking that we're not the kind of people that could have a life like that. And, I'm here to tell you 5 days a week that that is not true. That is unequivocally false. There is a way that you can make the ideal attainable. You can build the life that you want. It just takes some effort and some creativity, and sometimes you just got to find the angle. And that's what I really love about today's show, is that the two people I'm interviewing have really found the angle, and they go through their entire thought process for building their business and planning the epic adventure that they have ahead of them. If you guys have any thoughts on today's show, or even if you want to work with me at a deeper level, I've got one-on-one coaching options open. I've also got the Clarity Academy and different online courses. And so hit me up, rick@louaviv.com, and we can talk through some of those options. And then lastly, I wanted to say there's a part in today's show where we talk about the bucket method. And all that is a way for you to look at your life as it currently is, and then figure out areas where you might want to apply more energy and focus. And in the show, I said I was going to create a PDF, which you'd be able to go download and start working through that for yourself. And as I started creating that PDF, what I realized is that I have a lot more to say on that subject. And so I'm rolling that into a new program that I'm going to offer in the coming weeks. And so I would say if that is something you're interested in, just keep on the lookout for that. I didn't edit it out of today's show because I felt like it could mess with the flow of the conversation. And so I just left it in there, but just know if that's something you're interested in, it will be coming out in the coming weeks. You guys can stay on the lookout for that. I'm at @RickAlexander_ or at Lionheart Radio on Instagram. I think that I've taken up enough of your time. I really love today's show. I thought it was the perfect way to head into 2019. And so without further ado, episode 128 of Lionheart Radio. All right, so for everybody that has been following the Lionheart Radio progression over the last, we'll say 6 months or more, has probably caught on to the fact that a lot of this messaging is focused around the idea that there might be something that you want for your life that a lot of other people don't necessarily understand. Or maybe they understand, but they don't necessarily have what it takes in order to get the thing that they actually want in this life. And so what I think is unique about both of you is that not only are you doing that in like the professional sphere and what you're doing for your career as you're both like leaving corporate America, and we'll get into that, but have started this nutrition company, but you're also like completely going nomadic, as I understand, right?
Yeah.
So what I want to do is talk about a little bit about, first of all, hold on. So you guys, you live in San Diego, for the people that are listening. You both had corporate jobs and you're sort of just living, just doing what everybody else is doing, right? And so what was it that made you decide that you would want to even consider living on the road?
Yeah, so we've always talked about living life differently. And then I know for me, every couple of years, I'm like, all right, what can I do next? I need a change. I lived in Virginia, and then I moved to Kentucky, and then I moved out here, and it's like, all right, ready for something new. And I feel like you're kind of the same way. And we just didn't see the 9 to 5 for the rest of our lives, the white picket fence where, okay, you get married, you have a kid, you buy the house, and then you buy the car, and then that's it on repeat. So I know that was a big trigger for me, and we've talked about it, and we're like, all right, we want to change it up, do something different. And I went to Malaysia, Cambodia, and Vietnam last year, just on a trip with a bunch of girlfriends. And Vietnam was so cool because had so much culture and it was so different, specifically in Hanoi, but still had a standard of living where you're not, just going outside every night to go to the bathroom.
Right.
And had, coffee shops and Wi-Fi and everything where we can take our businesses there. So that drove the location. But then as far as just the direction of taking our lives, like really being passionate about what we want to do every day and then just doing something different, I think was the big thing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's always, I've worked, in an office for basically since college, like the last 8 years, but the thought of spending the next, 20 doing that, I'm like, there's just no way. I'm not going to do it. Like, I refuse to spend my life doing that's something I don't want to do. Yeah. And then with her, it was like someone that once we started dating and, kind of took the relationship more, and it was like, okay, she's down with this, right? It's like, I feel like it's a lot more for guys to want to, live the, nomad life or go adventure and stuff more. Yeah. But girls are a little bit more like, no, like, they're just not as like free flowing into that type of thing. Absolutely. So, and that's one thing I was like with her, I was like, oh wow, like she's down. We could, really do this. Yeah. So we really just put a plan together. Like I remember it's like 2.5 years ago, we were like talking about it and we were like, okay, well let's pick a date, and the date was, January 2019 and now we're here. It's 4 weeks away.
Yeah. So you've been planning your New Year plans for a very long time. Like you didn't wait till now.
Yeah. No, it wasn't like the last 4 months we were talking about it. Like we really had this conversation probably in 2016 at some point, and we set a date of when it's going to happen. Okay. And we just been as it got closer, putting more into place, putting more thought behind it and things like that.
We call it the master plan.
Yeah.
Our master plan. But it starts with, building our businesses and leaving the corporate world, which I, a couple months ago did. And then he just put in his notice. Yep. And then from there, going traveling and living abroad and just exploring all of that. And then coming back, we have some other plans after that to just continue the adventure. Yeah.
So I think two things that I've sort of picked up on, one is the fact that you named it. I don't know if you did that consciously or not, but the fact that you named it, it gives you, psychologically, it gives you somewhere to put it, and it allows you to, it doesn't just become in the clutter of the rest of your life. You're like, no, this is a thing that I've named that I'm working on. That's a project that requires X, Y, and Z. And so actually naming your projects and the things you want to do with your life is actually a really important part of executing them well.
Oh, right. And so the master plan, we have a spreadsheet, of course.
One day I'm going to travel and I have a master plan with a spreadsheet are very different approaches. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And we took that, so we literally have everything, all the details on there. But then even though we have a Asian night, we call it. So once a week we have an Asian night where that's all we focus on. And
wait, hold on. Why do you call it Asian night?
You named that one. Yeah. I usually name most things, but Jenny definitely named that one. Okay. Right, well, I guess the first big part of our master plan is
do you order pho and
No, okay. not yet. We're still making our own food, but obviously the first big part of the plan is we're moving to Asia. Yeah. So certain things aren't as pivotal, but first thing, we need to get vaccinations, right? You can't just get your vaccinations the day before you leave. So certain things like that, we needed to push out a couple months. So we named it Asian night.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to your point, it's the same thing of saying, oh yeah, I want to move to, somewhere one day versus okay, we got the master plan. We're meeting every, we freaking live together and we're no, we have nights where we meet.
Super
we put
important.
it in our schedules.
Right. And schedule it out.
This night. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's focused work on that thing.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a huge takeaway for people that are trying to do anything big, especially with a partner, because having the ability to make sure that you're both on the same page and communicating what you're trying to do, and that's that's huge. The other thing that I noticed, so it's become really clear to me over the last probably year or so that if somebody looks for their purpose in life, it can get so daunting and difficult. It's just that's an abstract thing, and it's well, I don't even know where to look. One thing that helps is if you figure out what you want your ideal lifestyle to be, then you could start putting other things into your lifestyle. So then you could figure out like, well, what job would even fit the lifestyle I want? And that's a problem. A lot of times people pick a job because it looks good, but then they find that they hate their life because they don't like the lifestyle of the rat race and the cubicle and the whole thing. So I'm curious with you guys, as you were thinking about this the master plan and before the Asian nights and stuff, the businesses you started, were those a byproduct of wanting to live this lifestyle, or what was the order there of things?
So, good question. I would say that we knew we wanted to live the entrepreneur life. I would say that happened first. And yeah, I get the question a lot too, like, oh, I just don't know what to do. And I'm like, you just start something, try something. And then you're one step closer because you know what you want or what you don't want. And so we probably had a handful of ideas that we've tossed around. And we just kept either trying some things or we were already kind of living our passion of what we were doing, which is, fitness, nutrition, and all of that, and got connected with the right people where it kind of naturally happened. Yeah. But it didn't naturally happen in the sense of like, oh, this was all just created for me. It was kind of like, oh, here's a little opportunity. Okay, I'm gonna fucking like jump on this and turn it into what, it is now.
Okay. Because with nutrition, you both started essentially like it was just an opportunity to help somebody else with a nutrition company.
Right.
Isn't that how it started?
Yeah. So Jen Ryan, she's a really awesome nutritionist. She reached out and was like, hey, I really need some help. She wouldn't be mad if I said that she doesn't know how to attach a file to an email. Okay. So it was like, we need some business consulting help. Yeah. So I started helping her out with that. But because of my experience with, doing bikini shows and CrossFit and things like that, and just being around Aaron, who was already weighing and measuring all of his food and knew all that stuff anyway, I had value to bring in that sense too. And so I, helped her kind of on the business side, but then we started getting into, I was working with her clients and she was mentoring me and she's awesome at this stuff. And then I started studying more to get my license, and that kind of at the same time, then you got in the picture and started studying more to get your license. And then that's just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah. So I've known Jen for a long time, since she moved out here. So when she first started her nutrition business, she reached out to me to help her build the website because my background's in software. So I did that, helped her set up all that and things like that. And then Jenny started working with her, and we would meet up and sometimes and talk nutrition. Because for me, it was like a hobby, right? I read a lot of the first kind of flexible dieting books when RP first put theirs out, and it was just something I could nerd out on. I liked the data side of it, and it was came easy to me. Okay. And then as Jen's business started scaling, someone posted about her on Instagram. Someone with
Lauren Fisher.
Yeah, shit tons of followers. 500 emails came in overnight, and she panicked. It was help! Can we write something? So I remember we were in your room one night, and I wrote a bunch of code and connected it to her Gmail account to parse all of her emails and dump them into spreadsheets, so that she could have a sane way of going through a system of going through, instead of just her whole Gmail just completely backed up with 500 came in that first night, and then a couple hundred more came in over the next couple days. So that was the first, I guess, catalyst part of really getting into it. Right.
So something you mentioned there, I think, is also another huge takeaway for the listeners. When you're staring at okay, whatever I'm doing isn't working, or there's something I want to change or something I'm unhappy with, but looking at the infinite is how do I figure out where to start, right? And start something is good advice, because through it you kind of figure out what you do and don't like. However, I started something many times, and it was a really painful process to get where I am now. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you brought up was, I love this. I'm already nerding out on this stuff. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that makes it's become clear to me that makes a really good business owner is someone that nerds out about the product, because you're always going to be the person that helps evolve it and push it, and you're never going to be okay with just leaving it exactly how it is. Yeah. Right? So with supplements, I love the product that I created. However, I'm not the kind of person that nerds out over the chemistry, and I'm not trying to fix it. I'm not and so that I don't have that pull to do it. So I do think for people that are listening to this, as you think about what you might want to do, to start where you're really interested. Mm-hmm. When I think about the shift that I've made with Lionheart Radio and we've grown, I don't even know, 10x over the last 6 months. but I nerd out over psychology. Like I watch lectures every single night almost for hours. And so I'm always sort of in that world, and that positions me to provide the best product for the client.
Yeah.
And so I think for you, that is like a really good insight that you picked up on or didn't. But the fact that you're like working in this area that you're super interested in, for the people that are listening to this, like you should start where you are really passionate already.
Mm-hmm.
That way the grind doesn't feel like quite as much of a grind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I say is like, if no one's around and you have the day off, like, what are you going to do? So like for me personally,
Perfect.
like if she's gone for the weekend or like I'm not working, like I'm going to get up, I'm going to eat like a bunch of food, like a bunch of carbs pre-workout. I'm going to go like smash the gym and then come home and eat more food. Like,
Yeah.
so
And you know what that food looks like.
and I know exactly what I'm eating. Like everything's a plan. So it's like, I genuinely love doing that.
Yeah.
So it was easier for me because like that's how I live my life. So moving all of like my, you know, my energy and everything I do in one direction is it just feels good. It feels natural and it doesn't feel like I'm working really.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I think having that thing, once you figure out that thing that you are passionate about working on, one of the really important things is it allows you to say no to other things. Because as a business owner, there's a million things you can do that you might not do. And I don't want this to turn into a whole like entrepreneurship episode, but just there's a million things you could do. And so I used to say yes to everything because I'm like, well, I want to make more money or, you know, whatever. But like, you know, we talked pre-show, like I'm terrible with diet. Like I'm terrible with counting it. I hate it. Like makes me just visceral reaction, right? But so now when clients are like, can you help me with like nutrition? I'm like, no, like, no, I am not going to be the best person for that. In fact, I'm going to be awful, you know?
I think that goes into goals though, because prioritizing your goals, right? Because I know I've gotten this before where I'm like, oh, I have like 10 goals that I want to accomplish in the year. And what I'm realizing even now is my goal on my like fitness goals right now, or is it on my business, right? And every single day I'm having to make a choice of, am I going to like, oh, I've got an extra hour, you know, am I going to research new like gym stuff or, you know, new whatever stuff, or am I going to research stuff for my business, right?
Yeah.
So you have to I feel like you really have to narrow it down to one big goal, and then you can have second and third place goals, right? But that's how they're going to rank, and you got to expect the outcome to look like that too.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So I guess this is like a good time, since the listener knows a little more about what you guys are up to, like going into the new year. Just, you have clients, you have, you know, you've made this big transition. We'll start with you, Jenny, from the corporate world into full-time entrepreneurship. What is your mindset like as you approach this time for the new year? Maybe for you or for your clients, like what are some of the mindset things that people should be thinking about just as they look to 2019?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is people always come up with, you know, 2019 goals. This is my 2019 goal.
Yeah.
And really understanding that it's not really the goal you're after. Like, you have to become the person who has that goal. And that's totally different when you look at it from that perspective. So, for example, I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose 10 pounds. Well, if you wanted to lose 10 pounds, you would have already done it, right? So why is that your 2019 goal? So it's really becoming the person who loses 10 pounds. And so what that might look like is that person really likes going to the gym. That person gets excited to meal prep. That person is looking up new recipes or new workouts in their free time, right? That person's very different. That person is motivated, right? Like, that person's very different. And so that's who you're trying to become, because that's going to guarantee you get the results, right? And you reach the goal. So it's definitely more of a mindset shift and like a character shift versus just, I have a new goal, right? Because come January 1st, right, you're not going to be any different, right? You're going to be the same person. So how are you going to get these different goals without looking at it from that perspective and really like changing who you are and going after that person? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if I'm thinking about this, so if I'm listening to this, I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but I'm not that person, and I haven't lost that 10 pounds. So like, what do they, like, where do you start with that? Do you start just trying to visualize, like, what would this person do? Or...
Yeah, no, this is great because, so for my business too, right? Like, just to put it in a different perspective, like, I have business goals, right? Every single morning I wake up, and I've actually assigned my clients to this for nutrition. When I wake up, I have a whole morning routine, but I visualize my future self who has accomplished that goal. Like, I don't just visualize like, okay, what, you know, the big business they have and how it operates and, you know, all of the business side of it, right? But I visualize who is that person. Like, she's a fast decision maker, right or wrong, she's making quick decisions, right? And I visualize myself doing that. She is a very like structured day, like put it in the calendar, like it's consider it done.
Yeah.
Right? Like all of these things, like even like how she's like dressing, right? Like how she communicates with people, how people look at her when she walks in her room, all of that. Right? So when I leave that, you know, 5 minutes of just visualizing it and everything, I'm pumped up, right? Because I'm like, dang, like badass, like ready to go.
Yeah.
And I'm so motivated, and I'm getting closer and closer and in tune with that person that I'm becoming her, right? So then the next like actions I take throughout my day are coming from that place, which is my future self, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's dope. So I like that. That's goes. I don't know if I've already released this morning coffee or not, but that's very similar to one that's coming out this week.
Oh, cool.
But by the time this comes out, it'll definitely be out. But one of the things I put in my corporate talk for this year is like, you know, you have the ability to author situations before they happen. And that's specifically like, that's almost what you're saying. It's like, before you go into a sales meeting or sales call or whatever it is you do, how would the person that closed that deal act? Like, who is that person? Like, who do you want to be in that moment? And so the more you can think about that, the more, because, you know, 95% of what happens to us throughout the day, our thoughts, the way we act, our actions, all of that, 95% of that is completely, it's our adaptive unconscious. And so it's happening without our awareness. And so if you just go into every situation like everybody does, like, well, we'll just see what happens, I'll do my best. It's like, that's exactly, we'll just see what happens, because nobody fucking knows, because you don't even know who you really are. And so, like, just taking a moment to visualize it. And I've gotten to the point throughout my day where it's like, even before a call, I'm like, how do I want to come across to this person on this call? And then you think about that, and it's like, you actually get to take a little more ownership over how you show up in your day to day, and like who you're going to be in every single moment.
Yeah.
And then that positions you to get the things that you want to get better.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when I was competing in bodybuilding in my bikini show, I would visualize myself on the stage. And when you visualize yourself, you don't realize it, but it creates feelings in your body, right? So that created like excitement for me. I was proud, like all of those things. And I tell my clients to do something similar, like, okay, you want to lose 5 pounds or 10 pounds, whatever it may be, but like why? Like what's that gonna give you once you get there, right? They just think they want to lose 5 pounds, but then when they start like visualizing themselves like putting on the clothes that they're trying to, you know, every clothes on and it fits good and it looks good. They walk by the mirror and they feel confident. They walk into a room, they put on a bikini, like the whole thing. Like, visualize all of that. Okay, and then think like, how does that person spend their day? They're probably excited to talk about nutrition, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really like building excitement around every like piece around that, right?
Yeah.
Like I really like talking about like meal prepping, like what's your routine, like what's your schedule, all of that, right? Because it's all part of it. And so just make it like, almost like you gotta become obsessed with it, but in a very like positive, like energetic way, not in like a controlling way.
Yeah, I think it elevates the normal stuff you're going to do anyway, but it elevates it in your mind so that you show up how a high performer would show up in those things. Like high performance is just, it's not an accident.
Right.
Like and for people that it are, it's like you lucked out. But for most of us, you know, like you brought up the fact that when you think about something, it produces a feeling. So a feeling is a very functional, intuitive thing that you get in order to navigate the world. Yes. However, what's interesting is your subconscious produces feelings. And so if you walk into a room, let's say we'll go in a sales call meeting, you walk into a room and this guy has a color on that you associate from some past memory with a bad experience, you're going to produce a feeling that's going to be negative. And now your interaction with him is going to be at odds with how you'd really want it to be, because you want to make this guy feel like he's the center of the world. You're trying to sell him on whatever you do. But instead, your body language is going to come off like you are adversive to him. And the reason is because you've allowed what you're unaware of to author your actions.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even day to day, and like we know this as entrepreneurs, the emails, and literally there's been times where I'm like, oh, I gotta check my email, and I've had to stop and be like, I need to change that thought. Like, I people are emailing me about this stuff. Oh my gosh, I'm getting ready to help these people, like change their lives. Like, holy crap, people want to hear from me. Like, totally change the thought around it. And that gets me an excited, like, ooh, I cannot wait to get on these emails vibe versus like, oh, one more email left, right? You know?
Yeah.
So it's totally like how you can, like, and you have control to shift that. It's not like I've just, born, like everyone's born just the way they are and that's all you're going to be. Like, I have the ability to completely shift that, and that's just how I change who I am to become the person that has the results.
Yep, I like that. All right, so I think what we'll do is, since we're sort of extrapolating on different points, like we'll just go to you. We'll talk about like one more thing. We'll just sort of cross around like that.
Yeah.
So mindset stuff as far as heading into 2019.
I mean, mindset things is for one thing that I really like where we change a little bit differently is I try and put my things in front of me. So I'll like write my goals down and like tape them somewhere that I'm like walking past. You know what I mean? And then going back to like the data driven thing. So I'm like, okay, if my goal is like X, for a lot of people, it's like losing weight, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds in 2019. Like, what does that look like from a breakdown? Like month to month, I should have picked a number that was easily divisible by 12, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right. So, because you don't want to get like halfway through the year and realize like your goal, you're now like behind on it. But you're like, okay, if I need to lose a pound a month, like now that doesn't seem that difficult. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you like break things down into like manageable size chunks, they're a lot more easy to like be actionable on, as opposed to like when you just push something down the road and it's this large number, you're like, oh, I can get there. But when you need to like make action like weekly on it, it can be, you get a lot farther. You know?
So you're much more data driven.
It's more easily for me to like visualize those things. Yeah. The mindset stuff that, from her is like, I've learned a lot from her too with that, because those are things that aren't as like natural to me, but I do, it's been a lot. It's become a big game changer for me too as well, especially the visualization. Even something like this, like having conversations with strangers and like things like that, where, that was like 8 months ago. That would be like I'm not going anywhere near that,
Right.
But same thing. In order to achieve my goals and become that person I want to be, I need to start visualizing those conversations. What is it going to look like? How am I going to enter the room when I don't know people?
Right.
Because for me, like last year, those were things that I would stray away from, like 100%.
Like super uncomfortable.
Super, super uncomfortable. But in order to get, where I want to be, to become the version of myself that I want to be in order to be successful, like I need to start making headway on these goals even for myself.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like you have to. Like you were saying like something about, you naturally have some strengths, but they're probably not all the ones that you need. And, that's one of the things that's become really clear to me as I've gone out on my own, and like my life, what I eat every day is dependent on my ability to continue to generate, is that like I naturally am not good at talking about money, but like it doesn't matter. If you want to eat, then you just are going to have to figure that out and like go be that person, no matter what it takes. I like the idea of talking about entrepreneurship as like a forum for action, because it is such a high stakes game. It like forces, at least what I've noticed, it forces you to elevate the parts of you that you typically wouldn't. I think one of my questions for you, I've worked through some of that stuff before. Like I would write on my bathroom mirror and stuff. When you write your goals down, how do you keep them from not just blending in with the background noise? So like if you write them down and walk by them every day, like for me, when I've done that, I've realized like, oh shit, that's been up there for 3 days and I haven't looked at it once.
I'm the same way. You're so detail oriented.
So that's something that's different. It's like, I'm extremely detail oriented. Like when something's on the wall, like I can't.
I'm not. So that makes sense.
I have a hard time like turning things off. You know what I mean? So like one thing, like I don't know if you guys picked up on it, I just had to flip my phone over because it was going off and the light was like, even though I'm looking at you, I can see that light going off.
Yeah, it's pulling.
So it's pulling me away. So things like that's like something that I'm just like more, natural at. When I write something down, I'm going to look at that thing. Like when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm going to sit there and stare at it. So those are things like that, or it won't blend in the background for me, especially because it's something that I know that I want. And kind of what we talked about, like projecting that into your like subconscious by sitting there and reading it. If you read that, even if it's like 3 phrases, right? And you read those twice a day when you're brushing your teeth, sitting there, like eventually you're going to think about them more. Yep. You're going to sink in. It's not like January 1st, I want, goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3. And then you don't think about it again until like January 15th. If you have it there, you're seeing it at least twice a day.
Yeah. Yeah, and man, we're going to talk about some of this in the Clarity Academy, but one of the things you talk about, like, mantras is essentially what, if you have a goal and you read it down, it essentially becomes a mantra. Well, in the motivational space, like, I just think the idea of a mantra is it's overused and it's not understood necessarily like how it should be understood. But this idea that you can sort of put thoughts into your mind, and then the important thing is that as you do that, what happens is you actually become more aware of the opportunities associated with that thing that you put in your mind. And that's like where the magic happens in a manifestation. It's like, it's not the secret, right? The secret is like, just say you want it and the universe will make it happen. Like, that's not necessarily how it works. How it works is you say you want it, but you put it into your subconscious through regular programming, and then through no fault of your own, you end up looking for opportunities. It's the same idea when you buy a new car and all of a sudden you see that same car everywhere. Right. It's because of the selective attention in your mind, you've associated that. And so it works the same way with your goals and the things that you're trying to do. It's like, if you keep it in the front of your mind, especially if you do it every single morning, that's super, super powerful for selective attention. But essentially then you go throughout your day and it's like, you're going to look for associations that are going to make you better at that thing that you wouldn't any other way. And that's like, I think it's kind of interesting because everybody, even though these are being attacked from different ways, it keeps coming back to this idea that you're like not leaving your fate up to chance. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. That's like one of the big things I keep getting.
Yeah. The mindset thing is crazy, and with me, like when I write it down or whatever, like it becomes real now. It's outside of my mind, like through the medium of me writing it. It's like physical now. Yeah. And then when I reread it back, it puts that same projection back into my head via like a different medium with that, So
right.
instead of it being in my mind as a thought, it's a thought, I write it down, it has a physical presence now, and I'm reading it back in. So it's more than just like that one thought you have of it.
Then you start telling people, right? And then you start talking about it. And then that opens up a conversation. They tell you that they know somebody who's doing that. And then you talk to them, right? It's just what you said. It's like making the thoughts come to life pretty much.
Yeah. And the fact that, this is an interesting thing. It's like you talk about like telling the universe what you want. Well, if you leave everything to chance, if you don't have these practices where you are getting clear on what it is you want, like really taking time out of your day to do it, well, even if the universe wanted to give it to you, it wouldn't be able to because you don't even know what you want. Like, you don't even know who you're supposed to be in that situation to get the thing that you want. And so there's no way that any kind of powers that be are going to help with that process.
Right.
And, a lot of this is like, it sounds kind of woo-woo, like you just start talking about the universe. But what I've noticed just from writing this last book is that actually, no, all of these things, there's like very psychological significance tied to every single one. Like there's a thought pattern happening in your mind that is actually changing this thing. And so I think it does get, I don't know, it gets like overplayed in the motivational space. But you can't dismiss it all because these things are really important. Like the idea of goal setting, like I think that's what I want to kind of get into next. The idea of goal setting is so overdone. It's just like everybody talks about goals, but there's no specificity around it. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of get into some of your process at like, how do you look at cutting down big goals versus smaller goals? Like, what does that all look like for you?
Yeah, so I actually went to a business retreat in Cabo a couple weeks ago, and that was super powerful because we planned out the next 3 years and really dialed in 2019 from a business standpoint.
Cool.
And so I had tons of takeaways from there, but it was really also focused on the mindset of it and really emphasizing that your mind is going to create all this or stop you from getting all of this. So the first takeaway I had is that we try to overcomplicate everything, right? So she even said like, all right, give me your 2019, goal. And I'm like, okay, well this month. And I'm like, got like 5 sheets down. And she's like, what are you doing? It should be like 2 numbers and that's it. Like that's what and everyone, like we all were trying to like completely overcomplicate it. So first, like once you find that goal, right, like simplify it. Like how can we just make this super simple? And then she's like, all right, divide that by 4. You got your quarters now, like ready to go. I'm like, oh, cool. So I've like never felt so confident in my business going into next year because I know exactly what I'm going to do every single quarter. I've narrowed it down to be one thing that I'm like can focus all my energy in and make it really, really good for everybody. So I'm super pumped about that. So that's the big thing, is like making it super simple. The other thing is there's things that are going to pop up, right? There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be problems, all of that. So she actually made us list down all of the reasons why we wouldn't hit this goal, all the things that are going to come up, or why we're not going to reach this goal.
Super powerful.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had to list down like 20 different things. So we spent, an hour doing that, right? All these different things.
Yeah.
So then we come back, we had to write out a solution for every single problem. So it's like, holy crap, anything that is going to go wrong next year, I've got a solution for it. Like, I've got the answer.
Yeah.
A really good example, kind of funny example, is one of the girls there. She, I guess, lives in an area that has lots of lice, and that's common. So she is like, my kids get lice randomly like 3 times a year. It's crazy, and it takes so much time, and then I can't focus on my business. And so she said, all right, well, how much time does it take? Like, what's all the details of it? And it's like literally the hours map up. It's like a full week. And she's like, oh, you get it 3 times a year? Okay, that's 3 weeks. So you need to be ahead of your business 1 month at any single point in your business.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So she's covered now, right? Yeah. So that happens. It's almost as if it's like part of the plan. It's part of her business plan now.
Right.
So like for me, I know I'm going to need some type of system, some type of platform that integrates a bunch of my stuff, right? And I was like, oh, I'm going to get stuck on like which one to choose and having to figure out, like, I just know I need it and I don't know how to find that, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, well, how long is it going to take you to figure out how to choose which one, or like find one, right? And I'm like, okay, well, 2 hours of research, 2 hours of test, 3 hours. I'm like, oh, 10 hours. She's like, all right. So map that 10 hours into your schedule in the next couple of weeks, and then you've got that, right? It's like,
yeah, very methodical.
Yes. So it's like listing out every single obstacle of why you're not going to reach your goal, then listing out for every obstacle the solution of how you're going to overcome that. So that was huge. So that kind of goes away from your question, but those were 2 big takeaways I got from that. And then as far as like more tactical of how I look at goals, and this is all in all of my nutrition programs, and these are my 3 guiding principles, but I think it can be applied to everything. So it's knowledge, application, and mindset. So you have to have some knowledge about the goal, right? Yeah. This is where a lot of people will hire out because
coach, whatever
it may be, to gain knowledge, take a course, whatever it may, like whatever your goal is, you have to gain knowledge in that enough. Like you don't have to become an expert, but enough. The next one is application. Like, okay, cool, you have this information, but how are you going to actually fit it into your day-to-day, right? So if you have a goal, like same thing with like Asia night, right? Like, are you scheduling time every single week to focus on it, right? So if you have a goal to lose 10 pounds, I keep going back to the example, but lose 10 pounds, but you're going to do it on your own, let's say. Okay, have you mapped out 2 hours a week where you're going to be figuring out how to do that? What the type of food you need, the amount of food you need, the like meal prepping or changing what you're doing now and like dedicating time to that. So that's the application piece. And then lastly, the mindset, like that's, obviously we've been talking about that. That's huge. And you've got to be motivated. You've got to be excited about it. It's something that it's a behavioral change and you have to be open to that. And like I said, becoming that person. So being aware and working on that. So those are my big 3 things that I think you'll need in every goal.
Yeah. I like the idea of getting yourself excited for it. So that's something I've been thinking about a lot. So when you have a goal, if you can tie emotion to that goal, you actually have a much better chance of achieving it, because we are emotional creatures and emotion can get in your way, but it could also be leveraged to get what you want in life. And what's interesting is like I guess that's the same reason that you would want to nerd out about something that you would start your business on, because you have emotion tied to that thing. And so it's going to intrinsically pull you toward it. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes like I've realized that a lot of people are setting goals that they're pretty apathetic about. And if you can't figure out a way to get emotionally invested in that goal somehow, you're going apathetic about it. You're going to stay apathetic about it. Mm-hmm. You're not going to like get up at 5 a.m. You're not going to do the spreadsheet. You're not going to do the thing that you need to do if you can't figure out a way to start like going back and tying some kind of, passion into it.
Right. Right. One example I heard that I thought was super awesome is, all right, if I told you over on that hill, there's $10,000, what do you do, right? You're going to go charge that hill and go figure out a way to get around that hill to get that $10,000. If there's going to be like a roadblock, you're going to figure out how to get around it. If there's going to be something, like, you're going to be so excited of like what you're going to do with that $10,000, like all of it. So imagine if that $10,000 was just your goal.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, when I said $10,000, like you kind of like popped up a little bit, right? Like everyone kind of like,
Yeah,
you know,
everyone does.
everyone does.
That's
like,
a little stack right there.
yeah, you're like, oh, cool, $10,000.
Walking around money.
Yeah. But like, it's just like, that creates an emotion, like an excitement, right? So it's like that, and that's all just made up, right? So you have that same capability to create that own like excitement about your goal.
That's a good point.
It's all mindset. We keep saying it.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
So, I mean, all right, so that's good because we were talking like business goals. Do you set goals in other spheres of your life? Do you have fitness goals? Do you have relationship goals? Do you have like what other goals? So I think one of the things I did a morning coffee episode on a while back was this idea of like buckets, and it's starting to like get a movement of its own, which is funny without me. But basically, like if you were to think about your life and divide them, you have like a wealth bucket, a spirituality bucket, let's say psychology bucket, physiology, which would be like health bucket, financial bucket, right? So what I do is I literally list all of these out, and then I think about how full are those right now? And if sometimes you realize that you have to prioritize your wealth bucket for a while, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're like, okay, I need to focus on building this business right now. And so do you have any kind of process like that where you look at, do you sort of set goals, like broad spectrum goals, so you can kind of figure out what it is you're trying to do? Or are you more like, let me focus on this right now and then I'll come do this later?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really like that idea of categorizing like that. Like I might
It's super easy to visualize.
Yes. I'm a very like structured person too, so I like to be able to kind of, like you said, have its place.
Yeah.
So I like that. And I kind of think I do somewhat think of it like that, but that makes it more clear. Yeah, so for 2019, I would say my 3 goals are like my business is number 1, and I had to kind of make a hard decision on that between like my fitness and because that's kind of what we talk about. It's kind of part of our business too, right? So business is number 1, and then fitness, health number 2, and then like our Asia travels, exploring being number 3. Those ones I would say like think about it as in terms of goals, in terms of like relationships, as far as like him and I, or like friend groups or things like that. I feel super fulfilled in all of that. It's like super happy. So it's not something that I feel like I have to like put energy in or set a goal to be better.
Yeah.
But I think naturally it's like an everyday, like I think about it every day, but I guess I haven't termed it like, I have a goal there. And then as far as like spiritual, how do I say that word again?
Spirituality.
That's one.
Yeah.
I think I'm super into like even like your morning coffees, right? And like the life coach. Like I had a life coach / business coach for a while, and that just opened the door. And I sent you a podcast the other day about like that aspect. So I think I do that naturally because I know it feeds into every aspect of my life.
Sure.
So it's always like up there as a priority, but kind of same thing. I don't have like a specific like goal around it.
Yeah. Well, I think awareness is like the idea behind the buckets.
Right.
But so you are aware of these things and you're like, well, those buckets are full. So it's like not a focus right now. One of the things that I had a coach do for me, and I think this is super potent, is he essentially like asked me like, well, what are the things that you value? And I was like having trouble figuring them out. And I was like, well, I value, I don't know, like friendship, I guess. And I value whatever. And he's like, okay, so he said essentially like, let's look at your bookshelf. And then we'll look at your bank account. And then those 2 things will basically tell you what you actually value. Because you will spend time, and you will invest time and money into the things that you actually value. Mm-hmm. And so like one of the things he brought up for me is like relationships. He's like, you value relationships. And I'm like, yeah, of course. And he's like, oh, so do you spend a lot of money improving your relationships? And I was like, no. He's like, well, do you read a lot of books on communication and how you, I'm like, no. He's like, so are you just expecting that the world's going to know this value? And so that's super important. Like, that's one of the things where like values are huge, and we'll talk about in the Clarity Academy, but it's like this idea that you can't just expect that these things are going to be, you have to draw awareness around all of the different components of your life. And if you neglect one, do so under your own volition, knowing that I'm building this right now and that, I'll be circling back to filling this bucket later.
Yeah. And that's like setting the expectations, right? Where I really want to, like, I have all these like fitness and physique goals and like, I've thought about new shows and things like that, but I'm going to have to like knock that down because business is my priority right now.
Yeah.
And then we have these plans like to travel and all the things, right? So that's just, I have to set the expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we were talking, you almost already talked about doing this idea that you sort of write out your goals and then you have a spreadsheet for deducing them, right? For just cutting them down and making them more manageable.
Yeah.
Is that probably would you say that's the extent of your sort of goal process?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what is most important to me, right? Or like what do I want most out of my life in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah.
Right. And then I think, okay, what do I need to do in order to start making headway on those?
Yeah.
And for me, like I'm the putting them down and then breaking them down makes it more manageable to me. Because like say you have some like really big goal, right? Say you want to make whatever, like 500K next year, something big.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
And you're like, okay, what does that look like? Okay, if right now in my business I'm offering like this product or this service and it's X amount of dollars, and you're like, okay, oh wow, well that's only, my math's gonna be completely off because I'm just gonna make it up, but that's like 200 people over the year. And you're like, now when you think about that, you're like, okay, it's 200 people over 4 quarters, that's 50 people a quarter. That doesn't seem that far-fetched, right? It's not this monstrous number, but you're like, I could work with 50 people a quarter. Like, I can do that,
Yeah.
So it becomes more manageable. So I always try and break things down into, like, what is these next type of, like, actionable steps that I can actually start making work on.
Yeah.
And then, like, over time, like, it's just math. It all rolls up.
Right.
And I just try and think, like, what is the smallest way I can break it down to start making action on?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's great. Like awareness of what you're actually capable of. That's super important too.
Mm-hmm.
And what you find is when you break stuff down into manageable steps, that you're actually capable of the bigger things than you think. It's just that you haven't looked at them in the right terms.
Yeah.
And so we like live in sort of a weird delusion for whatever reason. Like we don't necessarily know. We sort of like make ourselves better in our mind, like what we're capable of. And then the reality is that we're actually better than even that, but we're not acting in either right now because we've told our mind that we're, it's this weird psychological thing that we do where we make ourselves look better to ourselves. And so we tend not to work on the little things that we have to work on. Like people just generally in self-awareness misdiagnose themselves on how good they are at things. They think that they're better. Mm-hmm. The reality is those things are even more attainable than you think they are, but you have to like pull back that delusion of what you're doing and like really look into like, what do I have to do today? And so I really like that there's this central theme of like taking ownership over all of the different moments to get where you want to get.
Yeah. I mean, we literally sat down probably a couple of weeks ago and we said, all right, what's your goal for 2018? We said, all right, like what the next couple of months? And then we turned that into clients, and then we broke that down into months. And then we said, okay, well, that means X for this month. And then what are it was like 7 things to create that. And then you had your to-do list, and it was like, oh,
we did it in
cool.
like 20, 25 minutes.
Right.
We just sat down and like, okay, these are these things. We just like broke it down.
Yep.
And I think like because when you think like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, and you just have like all these ideas in your head and they're like floating around, you kind of get overwhelmed. When you write everything down and break it down, you're like, okay, this week I need to do 2 of these 7 things. And then the week after that, I do another 2. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, like I'm making headway. You get momentum rolling. Like getting the ball rolling is huge. Like getting those small, quick wins really helps because it's like you get some confidence in yourself. Like, okay, I'm making room on this. Like I can do this.
Yeah.
And just breaking them down and getting that ball rolling is really like that. It just helps so much.
Yeah.
I think too, a lot of people are very good if they're given a path. Yeah. Right? Like a lot of people might be scared to try the entrepreneur path because they're like, holy crap, it's just so much like all over the place. And they feel very good like on their path, not meaning like their career path, but like they have a job, right? And there's lines of what you do and what you're expected to do. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are like, oh, I can do this, right? And I can excel within this path or within this box, right? But then once you get out in the entrepreneur world, it's like, holy crap, I could do anything and I don't know if I'm good at it or not and what makes me good. And there's just so much unknown. So like mapping it out like that gives you more of that path where you're like, oh, I can excel in these 7 things. I can do really well at those. I find a lot of people who are like thinking about the entrepreneur route are probably successful at their current jobs.
Yeah.
But that's what scares them. And I was the same exact way. I'm like, oh, I'm only really good if I'm told what to do. I can excel at that. But then creating that path for myself helped a lot because now I feel like I'm almost like, it's like I'm reporting to Jenny. Yeah. Right? Like, and I want to make sure I did this really, really well.
You gotta keep Jenny happy.
Gotta keep Jenny happy.
No. Man, okay, so that's great. This is, man, we'll just drop a Lionheart exclusive. So, one of the things I've done is I've like divided essentially all of humanity into 2 archetypes. So there's sled dogs and there's artists. So an artist can take a blank canvas and make it whatever, right? But a sled dog, I'm a sled dog, like, I need a path. I need to know like a couple things. I need to know where we going and when do we need to get there. And other than that, obstacles, like I'm the guy that can figure that part of it out. But if you give me a blank canvas, I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do you want me to, like I'm not a paint by numbers. I'm a paint by numbers guy. Yeah. And so knowing that about yourself allows you to set your environment up in order for you to succeed in that thing. And so for the longest time, I was treating myself like I was an artist in the entrepreneurship journey. And like we were talking about structure, I would take leave from the military and I would try to work and I'd be like, I'm all over the place. Yeah. No idea what to do. So understanding the kind of person that you are, like it allows you to add constraints around your environment to set you up for success.
100%. And are you familiar with masculine and feminine energy?
Yeah.
So it sounds like the exact same thing, right? So knowing, are you more masculine energy or are you more feminine energy, which would be more of like the artist type, right?
Yeah.
And so understanding like your percentage breakdown, so then you know how to operate.
Do you have like a percentage to yours?
I took some quiz that told me, and I am definitely more masculine.
Was it like a legit quiz? Was it like, what kind of pizza are you? Like, what kind? Was it a BuzzFeed?
It wasn't a BuzzFeed one. It was, I don't even know the name of it, so I wouldn't even tell you, but it was some random one. I don't know, I would say it wasn't like the best one, but it wasn't a BuzzFeed one. Yeah. But I think, like, I'm definitely more masculine. Like, I'm very, like, type A. Like, I'm going to get this done. I'll go talk to people. Like, I'll get it done. Yep. But I do feel like I do have a creative side and a...
For sure.
Side where I like to, just talk to people or just try new things or just kind of spend the day and not really have a structure, right? But I'm definitely more of the masculine energy. So I would say 60-40.
Yeah. And so I guess that's a good point. Nobody is one thing almost. Right. Right? Yeah. But in order for my creative side to flourish, there has to be a structure and a path. Yes. And so knowing like the majority of how you operate, it allows you to condition your environment for that. And then, then you'll find that within that you have the mobility to achieve more.
Yeah. And I also, like 2 years ago, I would have never said that I'm a creative person ever, but I'm so open to the fact that I can be anything I want to be, right? Yeah. And so if I'm telling myself I'm not creative, I'm going to take, it's the same thing with manifesting. If I'm going to think I'm not creative, I'm going to have thoughts that I'm not creative and take action that I'm not creative. Yep. But I've really allowed to like open that up and be like, you know what? I am a creative person because I did that and that. And I thought of that really ridiculous Halloween costume like 10 years ago. That was really creative. Like, and like this and that, and like finding evidence in my life